Hey everyone, I'm Laura Rafferty, a proud major in the United States Air Force, and today, I got a tale that's going to flip your world upside down. Picture this, a fancy rehearsal dinner, crystal chandeliers sparkling like stars, laughter echoing off gilded walls, and my own brother standing up, glass in hand, announcing to the room, "That's my sister Laura, she drives Uber." The chuckles ripple through the crowd like a bad joke that everyone's in on. But then, out of nowhere, a colonel's wife leans in with a sly smile and drops the bomb. Uber? No, darling, she flies Air Force One. Boom. Silence. Jaws on the floor. And just like that, the masks come off. If that hook has you leaning in, stick around because I'm about to take you on the full ride, my ride, from underestimated sibling to the cockpit of the most secure aircraft in the world. This is my story, told straight from the heart, with no filters. Let's dive in. It all started back when I was a kid growing up in a world of polished silver spoons and expectations taller than the skyscrapers my family invested in. My name is Laura Rafferty, and from the moment I could walk, my path seemed carved out by everyone but me. My father, Richard, ran a massive investment firm that turned millions into billions without breaking a sweat. My mother, Patricia, was the queen of social circles, hosting galas that made the society pages blush. And then there was my brother, Ethan, 2 years older, the golden boy who slid right into Dad's world like he was born for it. Me? I was the dreamer, the one who stared at the sky instead of stock tickers. While Ethan was learning about mergers and acquisitions at the dinner table, I was building model airplanes in my room, imagining myself soaring through clouds, free from the ground-bound life they all cherished. By the time I hit high school, the pressure was on. "Laura, darling, think about business school," Mom would say, her voice dripping with that mix of love and disappointment. "The family's legacy needs strong hands." Dad nodded along, talking about internships at his firm. "Ethan?" He'd pat me on the back and say, "Come on, sis, you don't want to waste that brain on something ordinary." But ordinary was the last thing on my mind. I had fire in my veins, a calling that pulled me towards something bigger, something that demanded discipline, courage, and a whole lot of grit. So, at 18, I applied to the United States Air Force Academy. When the acceptance letter came, it felt like the universe had handed me the keys to my own destiny. But to my family? It was like I'd declared war on their perfect plan. Graduation day at the academy was a whirlwind. I was 23, fresh out with a degree in aeronautical engineering and orders for pilot training. I'd pushed myself harder than ever, endless simulations, physical drills that left me bruised but unbreakable, and academics that sharpened my mind like a blade. I ranked at the top of my class, with over 200 hours logged in T-38 Talons, those sleek jets that scream through the sky at Mach speeds. Generals had written recommendations praising my precision and cool under pressure. It was the pinnacle of everything I'd worked for. But back home, at the celebration party my parents threw, the air was thick with judgment. I remember standing in our sprawling backyard in Newton, Massachusetts, the kind of place with manicured lawns that cost more than most people's houses. Mom was chatting with her book club friends, her voice carrying over the clink of champagne glasses. "Oh, Laura's joining the military," she said, waving a hand like it was a minor detour. Such a waste, really. Taking orders from all those men? She could have been running boardrooms. One of her friends nodded sympathetically, murmuring about how brave it was, but I caught the pity in their eyes. Ethan pulled me aside later, his Armani suit pristine as always. "Sis, seriously, rethink this. Come work with me and Dad. Flying cargo planes to some desert? That's not a life, it's a holding pattern." He laughed at his own pun, but I just smiled, biting back the truth. They didn't know about the classified briefings, the simulations where I'd outmaneuvered virtual threats that could end worlds. To them, I was just the family rebel, chasing a foolish dream. That day set the tone for the next 15 years. I dove headfirst into my career, climbing ranks that demanded everything I had. My first assignment was flying C-17 Globemasters, those massive beasts that haul cargo across the Pacific. I'd load up with supplies for troops in remote outposts, navigating through turbulence that could shake your soul loose. Long hauls over endless ocean, where one wrong calculation meant disaster. But I thrived. From there, it was on to C-130 Hercules in special operations, classified missions I can't spill details on, even now. Picture dropping into hot zones under cover of night, engines humming low to avoid detection, delivering payloads that turned the tide of battles. Adrenaline? It was my constant companion. Then came the KC-135 Stratotankers, masters of mid-air refueling. I'd link up with fighter jets at 30,000 feet, extending a boom like a lifeline, pumping fuel while holding steady in winds that whipped like angry gods. Precision was everything, one twitch, and you could spark a mid-sky catastrophe. But I nailed it, every time. My commanders noticed. Promotions came, along with invitations to elite squadrons. Eventually, I earned my spot in the Presidential Airlift Group, piloting the Boeing VC-25s, better known as Air Force One when the president's on board. SAM 28,000 and SAM 29,000, those iconic birds with the blue and white livery that scream power. I'm one of just a dozen pilots qualified for these VIP transports. I've carried generals to war rooms, cabinet secretaries to global summits, and yes, the commander-in-chief himself to destinations that shape history. Let me paint a picture of what that's like. Imagine taxiing down the runway at Andrews Air Force Base, the weight of the world literally on your wings. The cabin behind you holds the most powerful people on the planet, and your job is to get them there safely, no matter what. I've diverted around typhoons in the Pacific, threads of lightning cracking like whips as I recalculated routes on the fly. Crossed the Atlantic in electrical storms that turned the sky into a battlefield, instruments beeping warnings while I kept my voice steady for the crew. High stakes doesn't cover it, it's lives, legacies, and sometimes the fate of nations riding on your decisions. And through it all, I've built a life that's mine, properties in 3 states from smart investments, retirement accounts maxed out, private wealth managers handling the details. But back home? None of it showed. Family visits were rare, twice a year if I was lucky, squeezed between deployments. And every time, the assumptions piled up like unchecked baggage. Ethan, now thriving at Dad's firm and engaged to Brooke, whose family owned half of Cape Cod, would ask, still hauling cargo, Laura. Must be tough out there. Mom fretted over the phone, are you managing okay, dear? Government pay can't be much. Dad lectured about real careers, oblivious to the clearances I held that made his boardroom secrets look like child's play. And Brooke? Oh, she was the queen of backhanded sympathy. At family dinners, she'd lean in, her designer dress shimmering, and say, Laura, tell us about your little apartment in Virginia. Must be cozy. We're expanding our place in Newton, 15,000 square feet now. But you're so independent. I'd keep my answers vague, a game I'd invented for my own amusement. Still in transportation, moving important people around. Pay's solid, travel keeps it interesting. Never a lie, but never the full truth. Why? Partly operational security, you don't blab about flying the president. But mostly, it was the thrill of invisibility. Watching their egos inflate while I sat there, knowing I'd just flown the Secretary of Defense through a storm that would make them faint. I'd drive up in my 10-year-old Toyota, wear simple clothes from the mall, stay in my old childhood bedroom. Ask about Ethan's deals, nod at Dad's outdated investment tips I'd already leveraged years ago through my own channels. It was comedy, really, their insecurities blinding them to the powerhouse in their midst. The rules of my game were simple, no specifics on assignments. No name-dropping generals or missions. No explanations of clearances or responsibilities. It protected me, sure, but it also shielded me from their narrow world. At those dinners, I'd sip wine and think about the Oval Office calls I'd overheard mid-flight, crises unfolding at 40,000 feet. Meanwhile, they pitted my struggling government job. It fueled me, reminded me why I'd chosen this path, freedom from their validation. But every game has its end game, and mine hit at Ethan's rehearsal dinner. It was April when the invite came. I was at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, waiting out a weather delay after a long haul. The wedding was set for June at our family estate in Manchester by the Sea, 200 guests, a 10-piece orchestra, flowers flown in from Ecuador. Lavish didn't cover it. The rehearsal dinner? The entire Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, rented out like it was nothing. I was on backup rotation after flying the president to London, so I arranged leave and booked a commercial flight to Boston. Exhaustion was my shadow. I'd just come off a 16-hour leg from Tokyo for a G7 summit, muscles aching from constant vigilance. I landed at my parents' Newton home around 9 a.m., red-eye fog clouding my brain. Mom greeted me at the door in her tennis whites, hugging me tight. Long flight, Laura? Still pulling those Uber shifts to make ends meet? I nearly choked on my coffee. Uber? Where had that come from? But there it was, their latest assumption, born from my vague transportation answers. She patted my arm. Ethan could help you find something stable, you know. No shame in asking. Inside, I laughed. My monthly salary topped what Ethan cleared in half a year, plus flight allowances and bonuses. But I just nodded. I'm good, Mom. Managing fine. She chattered on about the seating chart. We arranged by, well, income brackets, dear. Keeps conversations flowing. You're at table 12 with the service folks, the caterer, wedding planner, personal trainer, spa manager. You'll fit right in. I quipped, sounds perfect, birds of a feather. She missed the sarcasm. I crashed for a nap, handling a few squadron messages on my secure phone, then headed to the hotel in my trusty Toyota. The parking lot was a sea of Bentleys, Maseratis, and Lamborghinis. My car looked like the underdog in a luxury showdown. The ballroom was a dream, white and gold decor, chandeliers dripping crystals, a string quartet playing Vivaldi, canapes that cost more per bite than a steak dinner. I found table 12, mingling with the service industry crew. The wedding planner, a sharp woman named Jenna, leaned in. Old money weddings like this? They sort us by net worth. Like grading produce at a high-end market. We shared a laugh. I'd grown up in this world, but now I saw it from the outside. Brooke swept over in a gown that screamed couture, air-kissing my cheeks. Laura, so glad you made it. Ethan was worried about your work schedule. Her eyes flicked to my simple dress. Still driving, huh? Uber must be adventurous. All those strangers, late nights. Brave of you. She patted my arm like I was a lost puppy. Honest work, nothing to be ashamed of. The economy needs people like you. I smiled sweetly. Thanks, Brooke. It's fulfilling. She floated away, leaving pity in her wake. Ethan held court at the bar with his firm partners, Dad deep in conversation with Brooke's father in their bespoke suits. Mom flitted among her friends. Dinner unfolded in 5 exquisite courses, paired with wines I'd flown in from vineyards on classified trips. But under the polish, the roles were clear. I was the cautionary tale, the one who chose poorly. Brooke's father toasted to family legacies, praising Ethan and Brooke's successes, glossing over me like I was invisible. Then Aunt Margaret, our real estate tycoon relative, suggested introductions around the room. Let's share what we do. Great for networking. Tables 1 through 7 went first, CEOs of tech giants, surgeons from top hospitals, venture capitalists with billion-dollar portfolios. Applause thundered for each. Table 12's turn came. The caterer introduced his company, Elegant Bites, boasting events for governors. Jenna, the planner, shared her premier occasions firm, specializing in elite weddings. Then me. Before I could speak, Ethan called from across the room, "That's my sister Laura. She drives Uber, you know, those cars you hail on your phone. Keeps her busy." Laughter erupted, sharp and mocking. Brooke chimed in all kinds of weather, poor thing. So dedicated. The room tittered uncomfortably. My tablemates shifted, Jenna squeezing my hand in solidarity. Heat rose in my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from the absurdity. Then, a sharp laugh cut through from table 3. It was Evelyn Hart, wife of Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Hart, Deputy Director at Joint Base Andrews. She stood, elegant in her pearls, and locked eyes with me. "Uber? Oh, honey, no. She flies Air Force One. My husband saw her name on the crew manifest just last week." The room froze. Silverware clattered. Faces turned like sunflowers to the sun. Evelyn strode over, grinning. "Major Laura Rafferty, right? Dan raves about you, that diversion around the typhoon in the Pacific. Saved the whole mission. The president even commended you personally." Whispers exploded. I set my glass down calmly, heart pounding but voice steady. "That's classified, Evelyn, but yes, guilty as charged." Ethan paled like he'd seen a ghost. Mom's voice trembled. You fly the president?" I nodded. "The VC-25s, call sign Sam 28,000 when he's aboard. Standard for senior pilots in the squadron. One of 12 qualified." Brooke gasped. "But all those times we asked, you said transportation." I leaned back. "I did. Air Force transport, moving VIPs. You assumed cargo planes and mediocrity." I never corrected because, honestly, it was fascinating watching the show. Dad's face reddened. "Why hide it, Laura?" I met his gaze. "I didn't. Told you about the academy, pilot training, promotions. You dismissed it all. Too busy with your world to hear mine." Evelyn chuckled. "Dan says you're in line for squadron commander, the best pilot he's seen in years." The room buzzed. Jenna exclaimed, "That's incredible." Brooke stammered, "Well, how modest of you, Laura." Wonderful news. I couldn't hold back anymore. Modest? Preferred operational security. But it was entertaining, Ethan explaining investment strategies I've used for a decade, Dad lecturing on careers when my clearances bar you from even applying, Brooke pitying my little apartment, while I out-earn most here monthly. The silence was deafening, a vacuum sucking the air out. It was like being undercover at my own family dinner, explaining my life to people who never asked the right questions. Ethan muttered, "That's messed up, Laura." I fired back, more messed up than announcing I'm an Uber driver to 200 guests. Seating me with the embarrassments? No response. Evelyn winked. "Sorry for outing you, but their faces? Priceless." I laughed. "My commander will call Dan, thanks for the timing." Aunt Margaret tried to wave it off. "We didn't know, dear." I shook my head. "You didn't care to know." To Ethan, "I'm happy for you, bro. But next time, learn about people's lives before judging." I stepped out to the terrace, cool night air washing over me, stars twinkling like winks from above. I texted Evelyn, perfect timing. Family needed the wake-up. Inside, I reflected on my next missions, flights to corners of the world they'd never grasp, responsibilities that defined me. Ethan followed me out eventually. "Laura, I'm sorry. For everything, the assumptions, the treatment. I had no idea." I sighed. "You did, I told you plenty." You just didn't listen. He asked why I didn't force the truth. Because proving myself isn't my job. Flying is. And I love it. He marveled, Air Force One? Damn. I shrugged. Big plane, big protocols. High stakes every time. Was I ever scared? Every flight. Keeps me sharp. He looked proud for the first time. Can we start over? Get to know the real you? I extended a hand. Maybe. If you're ready for who I am, not who you thought. We shook like sealing a pact. The rest of dinner dissolved into whispers, the story spreading like wildfire. I flew back to Andrews the next morning, wedding ahead. The ceremony was flawless, clear skies, me in the second row. Mom introduced me as, my daughter, the Air Force pilot. Dad asked real questions about my work. Brooke apologized sincerely, I was awful, Laura. Forgive me? I did, sharing a few unclassified stories. But I kept my Toyota, my simple style, no need to change for them. 3 months later, I made squadron commander, the youngest ever. The president shook my hand, well done, Major. I texted Ethan a photo. He replied, insane. Can I tour the plane? My response, file an official request. Some games are worth keeping. And that's the truth, validation comes from within, from the skies I conquer every day. There you have it, folks, my journey from the shadows to the spotlight, all on my terms. If this story fired you up, hit that like button, subscribe to Valor Voice for more tales of unbreakable spirit, and drop a comment. What's your hidden strength? Until next time, this is Laura Rafferty, signing off. Fly high, stay valorous.